If I want to introduce what metal is to somebody who's never heard metal, that's the song I play.
That's funny. I'd probably have to listen to that song again because I wouldn't even know how to do it.
So, John, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
These are always hectic schedules and things change around, and you have to find coffee shops 20 minutes away, or have to send people out for coffee shops.
Joey came back and brought me a croissant, but he didn't bring me a coffee, so I'm going to have to go venture out to do that afterwards because I've only been out for a little bit. But,
yeah. Awesome.
I'm happy to be in the lovely Canada, and Toronto is always a great city. And, Armored Saint really hasn't played here a lot, actually, in the last 20 years. We played in Toronto and Montreal when we did the Symbol of Salvation in its entirety tour, which was, I think, in 18, 19. But other than that, it had been a long time since we played here. We used to come all the time, so it's kind of annoying. But here we are with Queensryche, and it's going to be a great show.
And I mean, and what a tour also, and I'll get back to that in just a second, because they're not giving you a lot of resting time in this month and the next.
Well, it's a long tour. It's about 8 weeks. My wife's like, "You're going out for wait, how long?" And I was like, 7 weeks. And then she looked at it, she goes, "It's 8."
Yeah.
There was a period of time when I left Anthrax and when I didn't really want to tour a lot.
Right.
I had 2 kids real quick, and they were my first 2 children, and they were young. And quite frankly, I didn't want to be gone from them because I was a dad helping raise them, and I wanted to see their life development.
Right.
So I was like, I don't want to be on the road, 8 months out of the year. Much to the chagrin of some of the guys insane. But then Joey had a kid too, so he understood. But and we both had kids kind of late in life. But in any case, it's my kids. My son is in Chicago right now playing a hockey tournament. I was just watching his game. My daughter's in college now, so I was like, and my wife just came and visited me in Cincinnati and Cleveland, and so I could probably tour a little more now.
Good.
So although I'm older now, it's a little harder.
I know I'm going to use that as a segue in just a second, but so just real quick, from one more experienced father to a guy that has an 18-year-old son, my first.
Great.
Give me some fatherly advice. Like,
my kid's only 17. So
no, 18 months.
Oh, 18 months. That's an 18. Oh, 18 months. Oh, wow. Well, I think it's just I kind of view it the same way I view all of life. And that is just, you got to cherish every moment. Cherish every moment. Life goes quick, man. It's like, I am 60. Luckily Saints started when we were all 20, which is insane. Right. So we've been doing it so long. And we're very fortunate, and we're all here except for Dave, who lost his life in 26. But, it's just crazy. Life goes quickly. It really does. Not to get too deep and sentimental. It's just a fact. Yeah. And so I think that, I think a lot of people say, make the most of every day. But do we really?
Right.
I'm asking myself that. And that's the thing I think you really have to do is just try to make every day matter. Even if it's sitting around, talking smack and doing whatever, watching a TV show, but making something count in your life where you're being enriched in some capacity and just not being a zombie out there in the world, doing something that matters. And when it comes to kids, there's no difference. Be in their lives, be a present father, be a present mother. Show. Well, I don't know what your significant other scenario is. Are you married?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important for especially daughters to see a lot of love between parents, and my wife and I have that, and I think that's it. I think you just have to be very present. That's the key.
Okay.
And you'll be happy that you were.
I know that you mentioned on stage that, hey, we've got some 40th anniversaries to celebrate here, but you're on tour with Queensryche, who are very much, celebrating a specific milestone.
Right.
You guys are definitely acknowledging those milestones, but we get a very balanced set list on this tour.
Right.
But before we look ahead or in the present, looking back just briefly, is that something that being part of being present and being happy with what you have is part of that, looking back and appreciating that legacy, like milestones like 40th anniversary? Is that important to you?
Yeah, sure. Of course. I was saying to the other gentleman who I was having an interview with is that when I went out, well, I could speak for the band. You know, when we went on our first tour, opening for Quiet Riot and Whitesnake in 1984, playing arenas, third on the bill, of course, but we were just like, what are we doing? This is insane. And we were all so young. Nobody really went to college because we were in the college of rock and roll. And so it was heavy metal was our way to learn and our education, and that's what we did. We went out there and we were kind of figuring stuff out because we were still young too and not knowing a lot about life. So rock and roll was I always say, is my college education, and so I look back on that and think that's where I was at that stage of my life and how much I've learned. And it's just every day is a new experience, especially when you're traveling or touring and making music. And just again, cherishing it all. And, you know, I love what we've done recently with music. I think Punch in the Sky can stand there with March of the Saint. I really believe it. And I think fans feel it. But, you know, people look back. I don't know if I've ever made a flawless record. I think some people can say that about some things I've done. I'm not saying, hey, I get it. Like, I always probably would have changed something here and there when you look back in retrospect. Simple Salvation is pretty flawless, actually, for a heavy metal record, and a lot of people talk about Sound of White Noise as being that record too. But you know, it's huge. I just again appreciate what they were and at that time. To me, a record is exactly that. It's a time of record in your life. So that's why when people redo albums, I'm like, no way. Why do you? Oh, it make it sound so much better. It's like, but that's how it was supposed to sound at the time.
Now, respectfully, I will say that one of my favorite releases of all time is the Greater of Two Evils, where you, in my humble opinion, elevated certain anthems, in a more, you know, relevant time for, again, that timestamp, and specifically that version of Panic. If I want to introduce what metal is to somebody who's never heard metal, that's the song I play.
That's funny. I probably have to listen to that song again because I wouldn't even know how to do it. But the cool aspect of that was that it was me singing these songs that were originally done by Joey and Neil. So there was the twist. It wasn't like going and re-recording March of the Saint. We've talked about it, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. As much as we could make it. You know, we always complain about the original, the rough mix was sounding way better than the final mix. But like, again, that's the way it came out. That's the circumstances. The songs still stand on their own. And, you know, sure, I wish it was a little tougher sounding, a little grittier, a little more garage band, because that's really what Armored Saint was.
More back of the cover versus front of the cover.
Exactly. We were just always, you know, we're a loose rock band. I mean, actually, we're probably tighter than ever now because we all have in-ears, so everyone can kind of hear themselves. But I always kind of championed the fact that Armored Saint is kind of like this really garage band. And I say that with the most endearing of terms because we're loose. Like, you don't really know what you're going to get from us. And, you know, live, I always want to kind of throw little curveballs here and there because I don't want it to feel, this is not a Broadway musical where we're like, here is the show.
Like, no, you're not going to fly from the sky.
I mean, I will maybe one show, and then tomorrow I'll jump from a PA, and the next day maybe I'll be sitting in a chair because I broke my leg. But like, you know, that's I always want it to feel like it's that element of danger, and it should feel like that to me. That's why we're always kind of tinkering with the set and changing it up, and you know, I just don't. It's rock and roll. It should always feel loose.
We've had an album in 2010, 2015, 2020. So, I mean, next year
more consistent. Oh yeah, well, we're striving for it. We are writing some songs, and we've written about 6. And you know, our ambition is to try to get out. I mean, look, in a perfect world, it wouldn't be 5 years every 5 years to put out a record.
There's a lot going on for everybody in the band.
It is. You know, there's a lot, but you know, everyone's got things going on, and besides music. But the reality is, you know, we're older now, so it's like, you know, time is slightly of the essence. I feel like we need to create a little urgency to get a record out. Well, it will still be 5 years. Granted, there was that COVID thing, but so we probably would have toured during that time, like everybody else would have. And that might have made everything move up a little. But you know, again, I say this, and I've said it. Hopefully, sometimes I could be a little redundant. Ask my wife. But I say that, to me, it's just about the quality of the music.
Right.
Like, we don't need to make 20 albums, 10 that are mediocre.
Right.
To me, it's like if every record is great, then I don't care if it's going to only end up being 10 albums in the career, because they're great. I mean, Led Zeppelin only made like, what, 8?
Yeah.
And they were all amazing. Well, Coda was like...
Now that's going to start a conversation.
I know. Into the Outdoors is still not one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Presence is where I left off. But, I mean, come on, like... if that's the way your career path is, then so be it.
Yeah. You mentioned yourself, like, hey, we're better than we were before. You're also, like, arguably, bigger than you were before. And obviously books and movies have been, or documentaries have been made about the history of Armored Saint. But...
No, we're definitely bigger than we are.
There you go.
We're the biggest we've ever been. We really are. We sold more merchandise. When we go and sell merchandise, we sell the most we have ever sold. So we are definitely, other than maybe a small span of time in 1984, where we were probably a little bit at our height.
Yeah.
The truth is, we probably are bigger than we ever were.
Exactly. Yeah. So, question then, to start wrapping us up. When you have Punching the Sky come out, which... yeah, you couldn't promote that album as much as you wanted to with obviously the pandemic and what have you, but seeing the response to that album, both from a, commercial and critical perspective, even with your experience, and everybody's in the band, does that put at all some level of pressure on you now, where you go like, well, Revelations was, that was like the comeback and everybody's super happy about it. It was my first introduction to the band.
Cool.
24 years ago.
Yep.
And then every album that came out was like, oh, they're better, they're better. And now Punching the Sky came out, and everybody seemed to agree, oh, one of the best albums of the year. Are you mature and experienced enough to not let that freak you out? Or is there still a little voice in your head that goes like, well, their bar has been raised and people have expectation now?
Well, you know what? I think that's the way the music's kind of slowly developing. It's going to be different. It's going to be different. I mean, you could probably put Punching and Win similar, and because Win was a killer record too, I think. But and so was Revelation. I love La Raza, but it was a little bit, according to some people, it's a little bit of a turn. This one could be a slight turn again.
Okay.
I think it's important to keep the fan base and the public, a little on their toes. So, and if it feels natural that where you're writing, and that's the way the songs are developing, as long as it's sincere, I think that's the key thing. I don't want to go, what did we do? Okay, that was successful. Let's try to do that.
Right.
To me, that's the kiss of death for bands. I think you just keep going. You're always going to reflect back. I'm into retro. I'm into retro, 70s retro before Armored Saint. I look at those records and see how we can emulate those albums.
Right.
But to me, it's you always want to kind of be growing. That's just the most important thing. Is you always want to be growing, and that's just the nature of what we're doing, is to just keep on expanding on your style.
Yeah. So you said, like, I don't think I've ever written the perfect or made the perfect album. Is that the driving, like, catching the dragon, like, that perfect record is out there and you're chasing that, or is there something else out there that is the fuel that keeps you going?
Again, I just think it's most important thing to do is to make something that feels honest to you,
right? And
that's really the name of the game, is to just make music that feels like it's timely, it feels sincere, it feels like you're writing it from the heart, and however that comes out, and I think it's all correct, right, for the most part. That's kind of the way I see it. It's really up to the fans, to make the decisions about things. It really is, because I could tell them, this is what you should think, this is what I think, but they're going to feel the way they do.
Exactly.
And I feel that I'm a fan too. I'm just a fan too. So when bands put out record, I feel what I do, closer, less closer, love it, maybe don't love it. I'm a fan too. So I get it. I feel the same way. I just think, again, the most important thing is to, as the artist, is to not kind of rest on your laurels of going, this worked, so I'm going to keep, because then to me it's being repetitive.
Yeah.
You're just being repetitive. And believe it or not, I've said this before, and maybe I'll get grief for it, but I'll say it again because I don't really care. Sometimes heavy metal can be safe. I know people don't equate that with safe because of the imagery and the heaviness of things, but believe it or not, I think sometimes bands can be safe because they do something that they kind of know the fans will want, and so they play it safely.
Yeah.
And I don't, my favorite artists are ones that don't do that, or say, nah, we're not going to do that. I'm not saying Metallica should put out, trip hop, little bit of a country record, with some.
They've tried
some
country
hip-hop,
before, and
whatever. Like, I don't, because that would be calculated in itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think if a song comes out feeling like it has a twang and it feels natural, then do it. But if you're calculating, then that's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. But a natural development is a good thing for music. And, again, U2, Radiohead, those are two like my favorite bands of all time. I mean, if you listen to Boy and then you listen to Joshua Tree, it really is another band.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, same with Radiohead. I mean, Pablo Honey is probably their worst album as far as I'm concerned. Like Kid A is, it's one of my favorite records. So like it's, and they didn't just go, okay, this worked, everyone liked it. They went, no. And Radiohead in particular said, nah, we're going over here. And a lot of people were like, why? What is this? But hey, I think that's the true nature of an artist. It's the same way I would feel about an actor. If you get a part, it's like now, Daniel Day-Lewis is an amazing actor because he was just always trying to challenge himself and do different roles. And, to me, that's art. Not to get stuffy and snobby about it, but you got to challenge yourself. You can't just go, yeah, metal fans, they want this. Let's give them what they want. Here it is. The record's not as good. Yeah, but we gave them what they wanted. To me, that's it.
I think it's fair to say that the fire is still burning very deep with you, John. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you've got lots to do still today. You have to at least find one cup of coffee.
That's right.
And you can have a butter tart with that.
Oh, thank you, dude. You brought those. That was very kind of you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome. That's great.
I mean, you can't come to Canada without having a Canadian butter tart.
I mean, I'll have one now.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for all the support through all the years, for all the fans, for all the journalists and reporters, and just everyone who's, loves Saint. Thanks.
There you go. Awesome. You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.